Uh, Thank you, everybody, for having me, and it's a truly true honor to be here. If I could have my slides up, that'd be great. Thanks. So first and foremost, the ability to collect information from such an immense array of publicly available sources is changing the way in which states communicate about war. OSINT is a valuable and critical tool in the narrative battles being waged. Understanding how communities of online netizens search out, collate, and disseminate information will become increasingly important in managing public and international perceptions pertaining to ongoing conflicts. Understanding that war happens in a 24/7 globally connected information environment changes the way in which states are likely to manage not only the war in Ukraine, but also all future wars. Where once the state was the arbiter of information, it now a cacophony of online sleuths battle over facts and audiences. Being able to utilize these facts to a state's advantage is likely to impact not only the perceptions of conflict, but the ability to provision soldiers and wage war. As we've seen throughout the conflict in Ukraine, the ability to wage war has taken place in multiple different locations. Here's some imagery of the early days of the war when OSINT operators were looking at Google Maps and watching Russian movements entering from Belgorod and other places and using traffic data to try and identify them moving in. We've seen the use of UHF and VHF radio, mobile networks, and a variety of other sources really give us a new picture of an ongoing escalation in progress. But we've also seen the way in which open source intelligence and the dissemination of images and video from on the ground, from soldiers and their mobile phones, has really altered the way in which we perceive conflict in real time. In the lead up to the outbreak of the war in the West, there was a significant amount of concern that the regime in Kyiv would not survive. And therefore, there were very few efforts to make substantial provisions of arms or weapons. And the ability to provide imagery and documentation that shows their resilience really begins to shift that narrative, and I'll show how that happened in just a second. We also see the ability to continue this shift in understanding the narrative by documenting not only actions of soldiers, but also their ability to take out adversarial munitions, adversarial equipment, and other types of things moving forward. And there's multiple documentation sites online right now documenting the loss of Russian equipment in real time. And again, we see even controversial actors within the conflict being essentially rehabilitated through open source information activities and changing narratives that were pushed out about them for years, for 8 years pushed out about the Azov battalion and others, being shifted very rapidly through images and documentation about heroism and other types of on-the-ground activities being collected by a variety of actors. And now we're seeing the rise of a global community in NAFO, and I told some NAFO folks that I would be talking about this, we're seeing that we're leveraging a variety of new tools and communities to organize and disseminate and collect information in real time and push it out. And there are a variety of different mapping platforms and things using this as well. We can really see the shift in narratives in real time. And for the duration of the war, I've been collecting a variety of data, and this shows changes in tweets about Russian imperialism and Russian colonialism being pushed out. But more importantly, this is what I'd like to really talk about for the last minute or so. Over the duration of the conflict, and even prior to the conflict, I've been collecting data from 24 open source intelligence accounts, disseminating open source intelligence. And there was a wonder, is this really influencing the provision of weapons or the provision of arms? And the reality is that it changes perceptions, it changes narratives, but it doesn't actually lead to the direct relationship or direct causality associated with the provision of weapons. We see in the immediate aftermath that spike on February 23rd, 24th, we see a spike of open source intelligence coming out throughout Ukraine, followed by a very significant delay of almost a month before the major weapon systems start coming back into Ukraine. And then what we see is a steadying out of the open source intelligence within the global community being disseminated, and then a steady flow of arms and munitions coming in from the United States in about a 2 to 3 week period, every 2 to 3 weeks over the course of the war. OSINT has really changed the way we think about this conflict. It's given basically everybody in the world a front row seat to the horrific tragedy that's unfolding and the war crimes, the human rights violations, and everything else. And I think it's a valuable tool that we should be including in our discussion, but in all languages. And it's one that will continue to influence the conduct of the war in the weeks and months to follow. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over.